Space. The final frontier. The infinite black. The void. A place that's definitely cold outside with no kind of atmosphere. A thing so big you just won't believe how mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down the road to the chemist, but that's just peanuts to space. Space fascinates me. Ever since I was a kid, I dreamed of being an astronaut. Watching far too many episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation had me envisaging of a time where I could blast off to new planets, meet interesting new life forms, and look dashing in a figure-hugging one-piece uniform. Naturally, none of those things have come to pass, what with science fiction being, fictional, and my love for carbohydrates precluding me from aping the fashion. Crushing disappointments aside, I still adore anything to do with space. Science fiction is my favourite genre when it comes to film, TV and books. My favourite films of the last few years are the 2 Dune films from Denis Villeneuve. My favourite book that I've read this year is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I devoured the TV adaptation of Foundation on Apple TV+. When I think about it, most of my favourite and most anticipated video games involve space in some way, shape or form. When I was a kid, I would play Homeworld on the family PC, or Colony Wars on my PS1. Halo was a huge part of my life for such a long time. When I was 12, I got into Warhammer 40,000 and devoured the insane lore of a trans-dimensional eternal war that would never end. More recently, I lost an entire week of my life to the superb 4X strategy game Stellaris, and I had the ever-loving shit scared out of me by Dead Space. Though not Dead Space 3. We don't talk about Dead Space 3. What I'm trying to get at is, for me, space is a big deal. I've played so many games set outside of Earth's atmosphere over the years. A good half of my Steam library is science fiction games. But despite the wealth of spacefaring games I've played over the years, there's always one that stood out to me that I've never been brave enough to try. A white whale of legendary proportions in my own mind. A game that has stories written about its wars, battles that feature so many players the servers can't cope, and a learning curve that may as well actually require you to be a NASA engineer to adjust to it. EVE Online. Released in 2004 by Icelandic developer Crowd Control Productions, or CCP, EVE Online is a massively multiplayer online science fiction game where players exist in a massive, persistent galaxy with very few guardrails and very little curated content. EVE differs from most other MMOs that released in the early 2000s, such as World of Warcraft or EverQuest Online, which was sort of like theme park rides. They had a certain amount of curated and designed content that they funneled players through. You followed quest logs, you did raids, and once you'd experienced the content, you essentially would need to replay that content and grind to level up until the next expansion arrived. EVE doesn't do this. EVE is a sandbox game in the truest sense of it. The game drops you into the distant galaxy of New Eden and leaves you to your own devices. Players have the freedom to do what they want, to decide how they find their own fun. Whether it's solo or as part of a larger multiplayer group, you have an entire galaxy at your fingertips with little to no guiding hand to tell you what to do. But what do you actually do in EVE Online? There's no story, there's no questline to follow, so what actually is the gameplay experience? Well, you start the game by creating your Capsulia. Everyone in New Eden is a clone who exists in a pod installed into a ship. So first of all, naturally, you need to create a character using a surprisingly detailed character creator. Not that you'll ever actually do anything with your character model, save for having a little headshot on the UI. In fact, the only time you ever actually see your character is when your ship is destroyed and the person responsible goes the extra mile to destroy your capsule too. Some people just want to make sure you're extra dead. But at least upon every death you can crack a fresh clone out of the fridge and wake up on your home space station ready to jump into the black hole over again. You're taken through a series of tutorial missions to introduce you to the basics of flying your ship, combat, upgrades, mining, scanning, and trading. And once you've done it, that's it. Off you go. Make your own fun. I'm serious, that's it. Now, before we go on any further, I have to point out that at the time of writing and recording footage for this video, I'm about 250 hours into EVE Online. I'm still a baby at this game. There are people actively playing the game to this day who were in the original betas back in 2003. Most of the people in the alliance I'm part of have been playing for over a decade. EVE Online is a time sink of a game, so I'm going to be approaching this video from the perspective of a new player. Part of the reason I want to talk about this game is that whilst there's a wealth of content on YouTube for EVE, not many people talk about what EVE actually is and what it's like for a new player to join up and fly out into space. With that out of the way, let's answer the big question. What the hell do you do in EVE anyway? Well, I'm glad you asked. The answer is whatever you want. It's a truly unhelpful answer, but it's functionally true. CCP have provided a vast galaxy for us to play in, a detailed and realistic galactic economy, the ability to play politics both in and out of the game, PvE content, the ability for alliances to wage war on each other, exploration, science, and that's just scratching the surface of what's available to you in New Eden. Honestly, for a new player, it can be deeply overwhelming. So, where do you start? Well, the tutorial will leave you with some skill points, some items, and ISK in your pocket. But just like in real life, you're going to need to find a way to make more money. Interstellar Credits, or ISK, is the name of the game in New Eden. Everything you need to do in the game is gated either behind skill points or money. Skill points tick up persistently, even when you're not actually playing the game. You'll create a queue of new skills to keep yourself advancing. There are skills to unlock new ships, weapons, add-ons, drones, abilities, commerce discounts, the ability to refine certain materials, the ability to manufacture things, the ability to install your capsuleer with add-ons and upgrades. Most skills have multiple levels, all of which take longer and longer to complete. And by longer and longer to complete, I mean days, weeks, months. You acquire skill books for the most part by buying them and injecting them into your capsuleer. So, money is required, and lots of it. Some of the more advanced skills cost millions of ISK to unlock, and as a new player, the two most effective ways to make money are either ratting or mining. Ratting is the EVE Online shorthand for dealing with PvE pirates or drones. Most star systems in EVE will have some form of anomaly or PvE combat site for you to explore. Some will need you to scan them first, but generally speaking, in most cases you can just rock up to a site and engage the targets. Fighting PvE enemies will net you bounties for dealing with these pirates, and usually some decent loot that you can either refine or sell. The difficulty of these combat encounters is usually tied to the security rating of any given system. It's already getting complicated, isn't it? Trust me, it gets worse. But let's have a look at the galaxy map and try to explain some of this stuff. This is New Eden, the entire galaxy we have to play with. Each dot is a star system you can travel to. Each system is linked to its neighbour via jump gates that slingshot you across the void to the next system. When you zoom in, you can see these pathways and plan your route. Generally speaking, you can jump one system at a time, so make sure you plan your journeys ahead of time. Every system has a security rating. New Eden is divided roughly into 3 levels of danger: high sec, low sec, and null sec. High sec are the safest areas, and the friendliest for new players who aren't ready to do anything dangerous. These are systems with a rating between 1 and 0.5. Generally speaking, these areas are where PvE, mining, and industry are the main activities. If you try to engage in PvP in high sec, you have to answer to the Concord police, who will absolutely turn you into space dust if you attack other players. That's not to say people won't try to attack you in high sec, but they're colloquially referred to as suicide gankers, because they don't expect to live through the encounter. Low sec systems are 0.4 to 0.0, and these tend to feature a lot of people who play as pirates. Concord still exists in these systems, but they don't respond as quickly. This means it is perfectly possible to be ganked, have your stuff stolen, and the criminal get away before the police arrive. 0.0 and below is nullsec. This is true wild space. There's no NPC police, Concord don't operate out here. There's no guardrails against unwanted PvP. You are, most definitely, on your own. Living in nullsec usually means you need to be part of an alliance, or a guild if you're used to the other MMOs. Most of nullsec is divided between the large alliances like Pandemic Horde, Goonswarm, Test Alliance, Fraternity, and many more. I'll go into the alliances a little later. What was I talking about? Oh yeah. So, early on, to make money you generally spend your time ratting or mining. Now we've been over ratting, it's pretty simple, so that leaves mining. It's exactly what it sounds like. You find yourself an asteroid belt or a gas cloud and you start to chew rocks. Asteroids all contain different elements which you extract as ore. This ore can then be refined at a space station into minerals or metals, and they can be sold on the regional market, or you can use them to build things if you have some blueprints and then sell those. Depending on where you mine, you can get different kind of ores at different values. In high sec you'll find a lot of Veldspar, Pyroxeries and Scordite. It's cheap and plentiful, but you won't become a billionaire from it. In low and null sec you'll find rarer, more valuable ores, for instance bitumens or vanadinite, that you can sell for vast amounts of ISK per unit. But as I mentioned before, it's significantly more risky to mine in low and null sec. Generally speaking, if you want to mine in null sec you need to be in a fleet. There's safety in numbers after all. No matter where you mine in nullsec, you're always vulnerable to being attacked by a roving pirate or rival alliance looking for a fight. By grouping up with other players, you stand a chance of being left alone. Mining vessels don't tend to be great at fighting. They're slow, heavy and easy targets for nippy combat frigates. Most mining fleets will usually have a fleet commander and a capital vessel that happens to have a small cloud of powerful combat drones on board. So if someone does decide to try and make your day a little worse, at least you have a chance of escaping with your life and your ore. This then gets me to the next part of EVE: capitalism. The economy in EVE is wildly complicated and acts very much like the global economy in meat space. You sell goods and services for ISK, while supply and demand has an effect on prices. Dump enough of a resource into the market and you can drive the price per unit down. If something is in low supply, the price can be driven up. The market is even susceptible to inflation, deflation, and crashes if it's gamed maliciously. Location also affects the price, as local markets can vary wildly across New Eden. Trade hubs like Jita and Rennes will have wildly different sale and purchase prices for the same items, and the nullsec markets can vary wildly from system to system. Now this opens the door for another way to make money: space trucking. Yes, that's right, you can make a virtual living transporting goods across space. There is a dedicated set of skill books related to haulage skills, allowing you to skill into larger and larger vessels that can carry huge amounts of cargo between star systems. Once you can fly one of these behemoths, you can take contracts from other players and move goods between space stations for them. You put up an amount of ISK as collateral, as you're never safe from pirates, pick up the goods and haul ass across the galaxy. People take this vocation seriously too. There are corporations and alliances dedicated to ferrying goods around the galaxy, some that will fly in large convoys of space trucks and freighters. I haven't been able to capture any footage of them for this video, but trust me, it's quite an impressive thing when you see them arrive at a jump gate. Early on, at least in my experience, the easiest way to make money is to mine. A common metal like tritanium, which is always in demand as it's used in nearly every manufacturing job, is easy to find in high-sec asteroid belts, cheap to refine, and can be sold instantly without travelling to a trade hub. However, it's not for everyone. Mining is a really passive activity. You park up by a rock, target it, turn on your mining laser, and wait until your ship's hold is full or the asteroid is mined out. So as a new player, you want to balance out your PvE experiences with your mining to make as much money as possible without falling asleep at your desk. The second best way to make money as a new player is by going through the network of mission agents that are available to you. These are short little PvE missions that you can pick up and put down as you desire, and they're separated into a few distinct groups. Security agents are on the lookout for hired guns. These are PvE combat missions where you'll be set up against a group of enemies that you generally have to wipe out to complete the mission. Occasionally you might need to destroy a structure or grab some items, but it's all about the combat. These missions will net you ISK, loyalty points for whichever faction has asked for it, and the spoils from the wreckages of whatever you've killed. You also tend to get extra payments from the bounties people receive for killing drones and pirates, so there's always extra money to be made in security. Distribution agents are the space truckers. These missions are slightly different to accepting contracts from other players. You're being asked to carry stuff between NPC outposts, but you'll also earn some money and some loyalty points too. Mining agents ask you to head out to anomalies and into dead space, that's the bits outside of a solar system, to retrieve certain amounts of specialised rocks or gases. Simple, easy missions that net you decent income and don't tend to have any combat aspect to them. The last two are a little different. We'll start with research agents. In these cases, you actually hire the agent to conduct some research on your behalf. This grants you research points, which allows you to buy data cores, which are specialist materials that allow you to invent new things in the manufacturing tab in a station. These agents work similarly to the way the skill points system works, in that you're always earning research points whether you're logged into the game or not. Occasionally they might give you a mission to transport some goods or bring them some tritanium for their research, but generally speaking you set them off and you wait until you can buy some research cores. The last set of agents is location agents, and they aren't a way to make money, but they do allow you to find players. Now this is especially useful if you've been killed by a random pirate and you want to exact some revenge. Yeah, EVE Online supports you being vindictive to your enemies. It's great like that. Once you've made a little money, bought some ships, and leveled up your capsuleer with some skills, you'll probably want to get into a bit more. And now this is where alliances come in. Alliances are groups of corporations who join together for a greater purpose. An alliance is able to wield a degree of power over the game and the denizens of the galaxy. This starts with sovereignty. Alliances control areas of nullsec, and over the 2 decades of the game's existence, these borders have become rather significant. If we go back to the map of New Eden, Nullsec is divided out between the major player alliances in nice friendly colour-coded fashion. But this territory isn't static. Through wars and conquests, an alliance can expand their territory and push their rivals out of star systems. Most of the famous battles you might have heard about in the gaming press have usually been in the name of conquest. The larger alliances dedicate a lot of time and manpower to planning these offensives and strategizing how they can expand their territory safely, whilst diminishing the power of their rivals. As of writing, the two biggest alliances in the game are Pandemic Horde and Goonswarm, both of whom are regularly skirmishing with each other across the northeastern corner of the galaxy map. A strong alliance is run with military precision. Leadership in these structures are well trusted, well vetted, and usually dedicate a vast amount of their lives to the game. These are roles for only the most dedicated of players. Being part of an alliance's leadership provides you with a great amount of power and responsibility. It's comparable to working in leadership for a corporation in real life. You have to know how to manage people, how to surround yourself with advisors who can act on your behalf if need be. You have to be aware of project management methodologies for large infrastructure projects, or for the construction of super capital ships like the fearsome Titan class. You have to be able to manage people out of the game, as most of the larger alliances have their own web infrastructure and forums, or Discord or TeamSpeak servers that need to be maintained. A lot of them require fundraising from players to pay for this stuff in real life. Honestly, it sounds absolutely exhausting to me. I have 3 characters in the game, and one of them is a member of Pandemic Horde. When I joined that alliance, I went through an onboarding experience that rivaled the kind you would expect when you're hired at a real-life job. There were training videos to watch, a web interface to get myself set up with all the correct software and settings for the out-of-game connectivity. Seriously, I've had less intense onboarding processes for actual paid jobs. I'm not really going to get into the weeds when it comes to alliances because, quite frankly, it's too detailed for the scope of this video. I wanted this to be a short one, but it's worth pointing out just how seriously people take this game. Some alliances have propaganda departments who pump out materials into forums, discords, and onto social media. Some have intelligence departments whose job it is to enter other alliances and spy on their movements. The CEO of Goonswarm, the Matani, used to be their spy master and was an expert at rooting out intelligence from the other alliances, to the point where he became a veritable celebrity within the game. There have been recorded instances where spies have joined rival alliances, worked their way up the ranks to a position of trust, only to clear out the alliance's bank account and fleet hangar in a daring midnight raid. And then there are the battles. The alliance battles are things of wonder. Hundreds of ships regularly meet in space to knock the shit out of each other, but occasionally you get a really big battle. I'm talking about battles that involve thousands of ships. The biggest battle in the game to date took place in 2014 and was named the Bloodbath of BTAC R5RB. This battle between the Clusterfuck Coalition Russian Alliance and the N3 Coalition Pandemic Legion Alliance involved 7,500 player characters, and at the peak over 2,500 individual players in the same system at the same time. It lasted for 21 hours. It was such a significant milestone in online gaming that it has its own Wikipedia page detailing the events leading up to it and the battle itself. The battle resulted in trillions of ISK worth of ship losses, which can be extrapolated out to a real-world money cost of over $300,000 based on the price conversion for the premium Plex currency and ISK. The battle was so significant in the history of EVE Online that CCP erected a monument to the battle in BTAC R5RB called the Titanomachy, consisting of non-salvageable versions of the 75 Titans that were destroyed in this battle. If you want to know more about the battles of EVE Online, I'd highly recommend the 2 Empires of EVE books by Andrew Groen. They're both brilliant books that really shed a light on the background politics and wars in Nullsec. They're fantastic books that I blame entirely with giving me the push to pick up the game this year. With all that being said, these are just a few things you can do in EVE, but what do I do when I play the game? Well, story time everyone. Let me take you back to March 2024. At the time I was working a dead-end tech job which had no work for me. Literally no work. I would log onto my laptop in the morning, check my emails, and that was it. There was nothing for me to do. No assignments, no roles available. I hadn't even spoken to my supposed line manager in over a year. Nothing at all. For a full 18 months I had been sat with no work to do, despite my repeated requests. After a year and a half of my mental health decreasing and my skills fading, someone finally listened to me when I told them I had nothing to do, and they let me go. I was made redundant for the first time in my working career. In retrospect, I didn't take this very well. I didn't cope with this change particularly well, and I suffered a bit of a spiral beyond where my poor mental health had already taken me. But I had an abundance of time on my hands and no reason to get up early in the morning anymore. So I thought, fuck it, and I decided to try EVE Online. I was expected to join the game, get involved in the big wars and the battles I'd read about in Empires of Eve, or get into playing politics with people in alliances. I expected to bring myself into the deep space opera of it all. But that's not what happened. It was the mining that got me. In my early time in the game, I joined a mining corporation when I decided I need to make some money fast. Someone in that corp was kind enough to gift me a load of skill points, some money, and a retriever, which is a pretty common mining barge. I joined up with the fleet in high sec and head off into asteroid belts and chew through Veldspar into the wee hours of the morning. If you've been watching the footage I've collected to this video, you'd be forgiven for thinking that I'm mad, that this looks boring as sin. Honestly, I'd probably think the same was I not in the position I found myself in. I found a strange form of zen from my mining excursions. I would turn the game sound off and open an ambience playlist on YouTube or Spotify in the background and just chill out, moving from rock to rock, dragging the ore with me back to a space station to refine and sell. There's almost a calm beauty to it for me. When you sit on the tactical camera and orbit the asteroid with your mining drones, there's a soothing, almost hypnotic rhythm to the act of mining that I found so appealing and so enjoyable. I wasn't making a huge amount of ISK. In a couple of hours play, I'd maybe make 4 or 5 million ISK. But it stopped being about making the money for me. It became about winding my mind down and enjoying the soft space ballet taking place in front of me. Occasionally, when I wanted a little bit of a change, I'd move to picking up distribution contracts and carry stuff across the galaxy with a lo-fi playlist gently thrumming away in the background. It's another reasonably passive way to play the game, but tracing the pathways across New Eden and working out routes to maximise the value of any given trip gave my brain something to focus on that was simple, yet involving. At the time I started playing EVE Online, my mind was in turmoil. Job hunting in a panic absolutely sucks. My mood was low, I was drinking too much, and I was really spiralling in a bad way. EVE Online became my sanctuary from that. It was the simple repetition of a job when I didn't have one that gave me the dopamine that I was struggling to find in my day-to-day existence. At the time, more involved or direct games weren't holding my attention. Games where concentration was required to high levels, like Elden Ring, were just frustrating to me. I needed the soothing act of mining or hauling to keep my mood in check. Given the game's reputation for being horrifically complicated, which is all true to be fair, or the player base's reputation for toxicity, which I haven't actually encountered, you would think this would be the worst thing in the world for someone going through a minor life crisis. Most people would suggest playing something more uplifting like Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley. But I think I'm getting from EVE what most people get from those games. I'm building a life for myself in the game world. I can build my little corner of space how I want. I can make a career within my alliance if that's what I want to do, or I can just jump out into the black and chew through some asteroids and make a little money. EVE Online certainly isn't for everyone. For all of its much advertised freedom, it can actually be quite restrictive. If you want to be a big fish in a small pond, you're better off with offline 4X games like X4 or Sins of a Solar Empire or Stellaris. You have to play by the rules of New Eden. You have to understand the factions and how to approach people in space. Some people just don't want to be disturbed. Others will fire as soon as you get close enough. A few kind souls will warp next to you and stuff money in your bank account, which has happened to me once. What's fascinating and thrilling though is that these rules are set by the players. CCP are fairly hands-off when it comes to telling the players how to play the game. Instead, they created and maintained this spectacular technical achievement and simply provided the tools for the players to build up these vast factions. If the game clicks with you, it's one of the most rewarding things you can possibly play. That's not to say the game isn't without its flaws. For all it looks beautiful, performance can be an issue sometimes. If you're in a system with a lot of players, such as MJ TAC 5F9, where my home station is, the game will chug significantly. In fact, if the player count gets too much in a single system, the game will enter a state known as time dilation, where it slows time down to allow the server to track everything that's going on. If you watch any captured video of any of the big battles in EVE's history, you'll see time dilation in full effect, the server sometimes slowing down to the point where seconds are stretched out to minutes-long waits for things to happen. Then there is an issue with the pacing of the player experience. Like most MMOs, a lot of the content is front-loaded into the game. you'll find yourself quite busy in the early game with the tutorial content, and you'll be constantly showered with ISK, skill points and reward crates as you work through the various early game activities that you learn to play with. But once you've maxed this out, the thing known as the AIR career program in the game, skill progression and your cash income slows down immensely. The cynical part of me thinks this is to encourage you to invest real-world cash in Plex by the New Eden store, which allows you to buy huge bundles of ISK or skill points to beat the grind and the queue system for skills. This then leads to the cost of the game. It's free to start, giving you what's referred to as an alpha account. This gives you access to a handful of ship types and the more basic end of the skill tree. If you want to unlock larger ships or more advanced skills, you need to buy the premium tier, Omega, which unlocks the rest of the game for you. If you pay month on month like I do, you'll be paying £15.99 per month. If you want to buy a basic skill point bundle, this will cost you 280 Plex. But when you go to buy Plex, you'll see that you can buy a bundle of 250 Plex for £9.99 or 500 Plex bundle for £19.99. Or you can top up the 250 with another 100 for a further £3.99. I'm generally fine with microtransactions in free-to-play games, but I really hate the way bundles are priced to force you to move to the higher cost options. And for the whales out there, you can spend up to £500 on a bundle of 20,000 Plex, which I find astonishing, but someone is clearly willing to buy it, otherwise it wouldn't be an option. There are also limitations around extra characters. I have 3 characters in EVE. One with a large alliance, one for PvP gameplay, and one that I just like to potter around in high sec with. They're all covered by my Omega subscription, so thankfully I don't need to pay multiple times to play them, but building skills across multiple characters is limited. You can only have one character earning skill points at any given time. But don't you worry, CCP has a solution to this entirely unnecessary problem. Yes, you can pay them more money for a multi-character training certificate. Each certificate opens up a new skill queue for you to build skills up. And it's charged monthly for the low price of £12. So if I want to load up all 3 of my characters with skill books and have them all passively level up over a month, I have to pay my £16 for Omega and then another £24 to unlock 2 extra skill queues that will be open for 30 days. It seems rather mean-spirited, don't you think? Despite my complaints around the cost of the micro and macro transactions, what you can say for EVE is that it doesn't push the monetization in your face. I'd say Omega is pretty essential to get the most out of the game, but I haven't once needed to buy anything from the store. If I'm short on a particular skill, I just add it to the queue and go off and do something else until that skill is completed. I don't particularly care to skin my ships or buy the cosmetics for my Capsulier's avatar. The sale items aren't intrusive, other than seeing them on the launcher when you boot up the game, you never actually notice them. I genuinely never expected to play EVE online, let alone fall in love with it. The game has always had this mythical stature to me. It's a game that only the most dedicated of players could even fathom, let alone enjoy. I've heard the stories of these huge battles, the midnight raids on corporate accounts, and the rampant politicking online, and it's always had my curiosity and attention. Yet I could never see myself playing the game. But I'm so glad I decided to throw caution to the wind and just start playing it. Despite the steep learning curve and the complicated nature of the game, I found this wonderful relaxing space to allow my brain to just stretch out. Without EVE, I genuinely think I would have had a nervous breakdown during a really difficult time in my life. New Eden has become a relaxing place for me. Even now that I'm back in work and back to my hobbies and building this YouTube channel, I'm still trying to find time to take to the stars and crunch rocks. You could say that being in space grounds me, somewhat ironically. If you ever enjoyed Homeworld, the X series, Stellaris, or even games like No Man's Sky, I'd recommend you give EVE Online a try. After all, it's free to give it a go, so what have you got to lose? And incidentally, I've been mining while I wrote this script. In the time it's taken me to write this, I've made over 50 million ISK. So I'm going to head off and buy a new spaceship. Something shiny with Go Faster stripes and a compensated cup holder for my coffee. You know, really treat myself. Thank you so much for watching. This video came out longer than I expected it to. I went into this thinking I'd write a quick 10 minutes on how EVE makes me feel, and it's morphed into like a full-sized essay. Guess a big game needs a bigger video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would really appreciate you clicking on that like button and subscribing to the channel. And if you want to keep up day to day with what I'm doing, I have a free Patreon you can join. Just head over to patreon.com/gadgetongaming. It's completely free. I don't have a paid tier, so please feel free to join me over there. The link is in the description. I've been Gadget, thank you for watching, and good night.